That fire isn't a protest. The bundles going into it are real money. Freshly printed, legal, spendable that same morning. The man burning them did the maths. The paper heats his house better than it buys coal. One of those notes, on a Monday, could buy a house. By the autumn, the same note bought a single loaf of bread. A few weeks later, it bought nothing at all. And this was a modern country. With banks. With laws. With a government that swore it was in control. Nobody stole it. The banks stayed open every single day. The law never changed, and the money died anyway. We're here to ask the simple question behind everything worth anything. Why money? To understand the death, remember what money actually is. A coin can't feed you. A banknote can't shelter you. Money has almost no value of its own. What it really is trust, made portable. A shared agreement that this paper will be worth something tomorrow. When you accept a bill for your work, you're trusting that millions of strangers will accept it from you later. That's the whole machine. One moving part. And it doesn't live in the vault. It lives in other people's heads. So where does it start? Almost always the same place. A government that needs money it does not have. Maybe it lost a war it can't pay for. Maybe it's propping up an economy that no longer produces enough. It has three honest options: raise taxes, borrow, or cut spending. All three are painful and anger people. So it reaches for a fourth option that feels painless. It prints. A central bank can make new money out of nothing, just numbers in a ledger. For a while, this looks like a miracle. The bills get paid. Nobody is told no. But notice what happened. No new bread was baked, no steel poured, only new claims on the same stuff. Hanin, the first quiet crack. Here is the rule that breaks everything. Prices don't come from the things themselves. They come from the balance between money and goods. Picture a tiny island with 10 loaves of bread and 10 coins. Each loaf naturally costs about 1 coin. Now the ruler prints 90 more coins and hands them out. Nothing has been baked. Still 10 loaves, but 100 coins now chase them. So each loaf no longer costs 1 coin. It costs 10. The bread didn't gain value. The money lost it. A little of this is healthy. But print fast and prices don't drift up. They climb. And people feel the ground shift. Now we reach the heart of it, the loop that turns rising prices into collapse. Follow it around. The government prints to pay its bills. Prices rise. But here's the trap. The government's own costs rise too. Salaries, fuel, supplies, everything it buys. The hole it was trying to fill just got bigger. So it does the only thing it can. It prints more to keep up, and prices rise faster. Each round of printing makes the next round necessary. The faster it runs, the further behind it falls. The cure has quietly become the disease. And here, the deadly part begins. People notice the money in their pocket is quietly dying. So the moment they're paid, they spend it, instantly, turning it into anything solid before prices climb again. Food, shoes, bricks, anything but the cash. Money that nobody wants to hold moves faster and faster, and that speed itself pushes prices higher still. Faith is draining out. The government, terrified, prints more to fill the hole. Each turn of the wheel is faster than the last. This is the spiral, and once it's spinning hard enough, no one inside it can grab the wheel. Let me show you the spiral in real life. Germany, 1923. The country had lost the First World War and owed reparations it could not pay. So it printed. At first slowly, then the loop took over. By most accounts, a loaf of bread that cost a couple of hundred marks in late 1922 was said to cost something like 200 billion marks a year later. Read that again. A few hundred to 200 billion for one loaf. Prices doubled in days. A price tag written in the morning was wrong by the afternoon. This wasn't a slow decline. It was the death spiral, running at full speed in a real and modern country. So, what did that feel like to live in? Workers were paid twice a day and ran to the shops at lunch, because by evening the very same wages bought less. Money got so worthless that people found stranger uses for it than spending. They papered their walls with banknotes because the notes were cheaper than wallpaper. Children stacked bricks of cash like building blocks. The money had become cheaper than the paper it was printed on. A great nation watched its currency die in a single year, not from invasion, but from a press that could not stop. If you're enjoying this, a quick subscribe means you won't miss the next one. Now, back to it. There's a second engine that makes the spiral worse, and it comes from outside the country's borders. No nation makes everything it needs. It buys fuel, medicine, machines, and food from abroad. And the rest of the world doesn't want the dying currency. They want stable money, like dollars. So, as the home currency falls, every imported thing gets dramatically more expensive. And that feeds straight back into prices at home. It puts the government in an impossible bind. It needs more money than ever, just to keep the lights on. So it does the only thing it knows how. It prints again. Now the outside world and the press push the same way. And the wheel spins faster. Now watch how far this can go. Zimbabwe, in the 2000s. Years of collapse and relentless printing pushed it into one of the worst hyperinflations ever recorded. Around the peak in 2008, prices are widely reported to have been doubling roughly every day. The central bank printed bigger numbers. Eventually, it's said, one banknote worth $100 trillion. One note? $100 trillion. And not enough for a bus ticket. Then, in 2009, the story reached its only ending. Zimbabwe is reported to have abandoned its own money, letting people use US dollars instead. The currency wasn't fixed. It died in time and reached for someone else's trust. And believe it or not, it can go faster still. After the Second World War, Hungary suffered what is, by most accounts, the worst hyperinflation ever recorded. Worse even than Weimar. Near the peak, in 1946, prices are reported to have been doubling roughly every 15 hours. Not every few days, not every hour. A price that could quietly double while you slept, and double again before the next evening. To keep up, the central bank printed the largest banknote in history, a single note carrying more zeros than almost anyone could read aloud. The press had stopped chasing prices and started sprinting hopelessly past them. Then, in the summer of 1946, the story ended the only way it could. The old pengo was simply scrapped, wiped out, and a brand new currency, the forint, was brought in to start the count over from one. An entire nation's money, born and buried inside a single year. That escape is the final stage every collapse ends in. Once people fully stop believing, they don't just spend the currency fast, they abandon it. They reach for anything that holds value better. Often the US dollar traded quietly at first, then out in the open. Sometimes gold, the money that is no one's promise. And sometimes the economy slides all the way back to simple barter. Eggs for fuel, labor for food, a morning's work for a bag of flour, a doctor paid in vegetables, a teacher in cigarettes. Thousands of years of progress undone. Because the one thing money needed, trust, was gone. And we watched a version of this happen recently. Venezuela is one widely cited example. After its oil revenues crumbled, its inflation is reported to have run into the hundreds of thousands of percent in a single year. And many people increasingly paid in US dollars rather than their own bolivar. Think about what that means. A country's own citizens quietly choosing a foreign currency over the one their government prints. When that happens, the verdict is in. The old money isn't weak, it's finished. Its single job, to be trusted, is gone. Now, an important line to draw, because it's easy to scare yourself with the wrong lesson. Everything we've described is the terminal version. Most inflation is nothing like it. When you hear prices rose 2, 5, even 10% in a year, that's ordinary inflation, the everyday kind, with its own video. Annoying, yes, but the currency still works. People still hold it, still save in it. The difference between that and collapse isn't a bigger number. It's a different kind of event. Ordinary inflation is a slow leak. Collapse is the dam breaking, faith lost all at once, and the agreement itself ending. Confusing the two is like confusing a fever with a heart attack. Not every shock is a dam break. Some start at the door instead of the press. When a country's banks are cut off from the world's payment system, nothing is printed and nothing is stolen. But almost overnight, much of the outside world won't take its money at any price. In early 2022, the Russian ruble is reported to have lost roughly a third of its dollar value in 2 weeks. The factories hadn't changed. The access had. Iran's rial is the slow version. 40 years ago, 1 rial bought something. Today, by some accounts, it takes tens of thousands to buy what one used to. Same wheel, entered from the other end. And yet, neither of them died. So if money is just trust, why don't all currencies collapse? Why do the dollar, the pound, the franc survive decade after decade? The answer is the flip side of everything we've seen. Resilient currencies are built, so trust is hard to break. First, an independent central bank, one that can say no to the government and refuse to print whatever politicians want. That guardrail stops the spiral before it starts. Second, a productive economy, a country that makes things the world wants, so there's real value behind the paper. Third, a long, boring track record of keeping promises. Trust here isn't a feeling. It's earned slowly, then guarded, made very expensive to lose. But trust once earned is never permanent. Take Argentina. It's often described not as one collapse, but as many. Across the decades, it's a country widely reported to have reset its currency again and again, knocking zeros off the bills, launching a fresh new currency, promising this time would be different. And then, by many accounts, sliding back toward the same place it started. The same story on repeat for the better part of a century. Generations of families have watched their savings melt away more than once in a single lifetime. So the real question isn't why a currency collapses once, it's why some seem unable to stop. So why does it keep happening? Because the temptation never goes away. Whenever a government spends more than it earns and reaches for the press to cover the gap, the spiral is waiting, exactly where it always was. A currency is not a thing you build once and own forever. It's a fire that has to be tended, a promise kept every single year by people who could always choose to break it. Collapse isn't an accident from outside. It's simply what trust looks like when no one is left to defend it. So what does any of this mean for you? If you've grown up with a stable currency, all of this can feel like someone else's nightmare. Far away, long ago. But here's the uncomfortable truth. A huge share of the world has lived through some version of this. Stable money is not a law of nature. It's a privilege, one your society quietly pays for every day, with independent institutions and kept promises. The calm you never even notice, prices that barely move, savings that still mean something next year, is among the rarest things a country can give you. And the warning sign that it's slipping isn't the price of bread. It's the day people around you quietly start preferring someone else's money. So, why do currencies collapse? Not because a government prints too much money. That is only ever the trigger. They collapse because the thing holding the money up is a shared bet. And a shared bet does not wear down slowly. It holds and holds and holds until the day holding it becomes the losing move for everyone at once. Then it does not slide. It stampedes. 100 years to build, gone in a season. The paper never changed. The agreement did. And an agreement can be dropped by everyone on the very same afternoon. But did you notice something in every story we just told? When their own money died, people didn't run in 100 directions. They ran toward the same thing. The US dollar, Weimar, Zimbabwe, Venezuela. Again and again, when trust at home collapses, the world reaches for one country's paper as its lifeboat. Which is genuinely strange when you stop to think about it. How did a single piece of paper printed by one nation become the money the entire planet trusts, more than its own? Why does almost every collapse end with people running toward the dollar? And what does that quietly give America that no other country on earth has? If you like this one, hit like and subscribe. Got a topic you want us to break down? Drop it in the comments. We're here to answer the simple question behind everything. Why money?